Evening, everyone. I hope we're keeping well. Welcome to webinar number 16 of The Player, the Person, the Coach. I'm delighted to welcome a man who I met, I think maybe on my first day of coming to Dubai, back in 2004, who, strange how these things work out, who's now the manager or the head coach of Leyton Orient. Welcome, Ross Embleton. How are you?
Thank you. I'm good, mate. I'm good. Thank you for having me on. I remember the time as well. Well, there's a lot happened between now and then, mate. But yeah, I remember it fondly.
Yeah, there has a lot happened, and I mean, it's good to seeing you do so well. That's obviously kept in contact during these times, and I mean, you got to come from a great family. I love your dad. The time your dad spent over here with me, and but it's good to keep in contact and say hello to. Hope your old man's watching. I hope you keep him well.
Yeah, he was planning to. Whether he can work the computer or not, I don't know. It'll be another thing.
Well, I'll start as we always start. Just go back straight from the beginning of your career, really, from the playing start, if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah, well, there's not much to talk about, to be honest. I think, like anyone, like obviously proud of my career and proud about where I've got to. Like I say, like most people would be, but probably a little bit different to some of the other people you potentially may have spoken to. And I think grassroots football, kids football, I signed at Leyton Orient at 11 or 12, which people of our sort of age would know how different, what centre of excellence it was at the time, how different it was to what academy football looks like now. Trained once, maybe twice a week when I first went there, but never played for the club at the weekend. It was always carry on playing for your grassroots team. And when I think back to how that looked then, it was fantastic because the age group that I grew up in involved Joe Cole, and I used to play sort of Sunday morning football against lads like him, whereas now it's in a completely different environment. Trained with, like I say, with my club during the week, and then played with my mates on a Sunday morning. So got to the back end of my under 16 year, and I was convinced I was going to get a YTS contract, or a scholarship as it's known now. But very, very late on was informed that I wouldn't be getting a contract. Chris Ramsey was my manager at the time. Obviously, Chris has gone on to fantastic things in coaching, but I think it was very early days for him. But I was always really impressed with the work that he did. As you touched on right at the beginning, Chris, my dad was banging to his coaching. And once I got released, it was a little bit like, I don't really know what I'm going to do. So I went to college and just started sort of babysitting, really. Saturday morning, tying kids' shoelaces, trying to give them a good time, after school clubs, holiday camps. Just to, if I'm honest, just to earn a bit of pocket money. I never thought about myself being a longer term coach. It was just sort of, what do I do next, really? But slowly, like I suppose a lot of us do, we got the bug for working with young kids, got a bug for sort of trying to make them a little bit better and give them a good time. And then sort of started to look at what coaching was really about, and try and take it a little bit more, I say serious, but try and do more of it. Yeah. To get myself out there doing more as much coaching as I could.
Yeah, and then so that took you into the community at Orient, and then into the centre of excellence, was it? Because I remember coming back. You'll probably be able to with my memory, but and you were working as, I think was you like youth development manager at the time?
Yeah.
Orient. Yeah. And I was very impressed with the whole. I suppose the interaction between the coaches, yourself, the players, just really impressed with that. You seem to have a really good programme.
Being in London and competing with the big clubs in London, I always felt like we needed a little bit of a different angle to go at, because we weren't going to get the access to the best players because they got them. But we had a fantastic, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, football and community programme in the country at the time. So we were in all the primary schools. Like I said earlier, I had all the after-school clubs and holiday camps all now down in the area. So that was our recruitment. We had no scouts. I was the only really, other than the youth team manager and physio, I was the only full-time member of staff in the academy. So what we try to do is create that environment that you talked about, where kids loved being there, and that the parents would come 2 evenings a week and a Sunday morning and really enjoyed it. And we made it, if I'm honest, some people might criticise it, but we made it like a bit like a club, like an extension of a youth football club, because we felt that if someone came along and loved being part of what we were doing, that we would keep them.
Yeah.
And I think we did. We got them young because of that fortunate scouting network that we had, and we managed to keep some good players. And I think over time, after I moved on and left that role, the club's got a very strong history of some of the players that we've sold on and players playing in the Premier League now.
Yeah, no, you could certainly tell that at that time, and it is. I just remember as well was the obviously the relationship, the bond that you had with all the kids. You know, every single player. I mean, it's the norm that, you know, for however long now, but every single player came up. They shook. Not only did they shake your hand, but they never knew me. They shook my hand, and that was every single player that came in there. You had those kids, didn't you? And it was just obviously the bits of banter and what have you with every single kid. Those relationships were special, I could see.
Yeah, and I'd grown up with them kids, like, as a coach, so I'd seen a lot of them on them Saturday mornings tying up their shoelaces when they were 4 and 5, and then the next thing, they're signed players at the Centre of Excellence or Academy. And by the time I left, I'd had interaction or involvement in signing or working with every single kid from the age of, you know, the new under-8s that were getting ready to come in to the lads that were in the youth team, because of where I'd come from and how I'd grown up around the club. So I felt like to then go in and try and be this official head of youth development and have a different relationship with them and their parents would have been wrong. Yeah. So to try and maintain that and let them be familiar with me and know what I'm about and get to know my family or whatever other things, I think important. And I think what you touched on there about the good characteristics you try and teach the kids. I think we're in an age now where there has to be a theme put to every single little thing that you do. So, there's a development point to a kid coming shaking your hands. It's just about trying to impose what we felt was right on the kids and hope that they took the right things out of it. Yeah.
Brilliant. And so how long was you at Orient there in that coaching spell before you went to Tottenham?
I'd done that role, the head of Centre of Excellence, for 3 years, 3.5 years unofficially. I had a 6-month period where the club was, youth development was in transition in this country, and they weren't sure about the funding through the Premier League and things like that. So someone left and I sort of babysat the role for 6 months along with some other responsibilities. And then when it come to the role being permanent, I took it on and I did that for 3 years. It became quite tough because in the area, the Olympics was coming to London and we lost our facilities and it became really tough and things become really spread out and hard to manage. So the opportunity for me to go to Spurs came off that, and it felt like the right time for me to go. Part of my development, but then at the same time, the sort of transition that the whole area was in had a big impact on the academy.
Yeah. And what role did you go to? It was a kind of link, the bridge between the academy and the community at Tottenham at that time.
Yeah, probably like a bit of a coming together of my career at that point, really. That football and the community had been a massive part of it. And then obviously my coaching within the academy and then taking on that role. Spurs already had a pre-existing role with a guy called Dave Dodds who had a big role to play at Watford and Reading. He was in that role, and the responsibility really was to develop the players and oversee the early age groups at the academy, under 8s, 9s, 10s, 11s, and then look after the development centres that fed into that. But what was really innovative at the time was that Spurs were trying to develop their own coaches to come through the development centre pathway like the kids and then go and work in the academy. So I suppose that was my job, to follow on the good work that Dave had done, manage that sort of level beneath the academy, and then how we feed it all into what's now seen as the foundation phase. It was before EPPP. So really the biggest incentive for me to go and do that role wasn't that it was Tottenham particularly, wasn't that that I was going to work with a particular age group. It was purely because I felt like I'd got to a point where I'd spent a lot of time in a great role at a great club, but I didn't feel as though I was really developing myself. And the opportunity to go to work every day with someone with the incredible experience and history that John McDermott has in youth development. Chris Ramsey, as I've already mentioned before, has played a big part in my coaching, full stop. But it was another chance to work with him. Alex Inglethorpe, I'd worked with at Orient before, or known through Orient, but again, fantastic knowledge and experiences up until then. And Perry Suckling was there also at the time. So people that I was quite familiar with, which was great. But at the same time, I got the chance to go and learn from them every day, and rather than being the one that's sort of sitting at the top of it making decisions, you know.
Yeah, that's brilliant to hear. You know, that you mentioned those three names, obviously John McDermott, Chris Ramsey, Alex Inglethorpe, and how well they're thought of in the game and what they've done. And I mean, been lucky to the guests that we've had on the webinar is that they've worked with some really good people. And to be honest with you, the people like yourself who we've got on here are good people. So you can tell where it's, you know, where it all kind of knits together. And that role at Spurs then, so how long were you before you were there? And then what happened then for you to go from Tottenham to Bournemouth?
I was there for 3 years again. There's not a plan for me to stay and play the job for 3 years. I was there for 3 years. And I got to a point, I sat down with John, and it was a bit of an appraisal, I suppose. And he talked to me about what he saw my strengths were and where he felt the job was going to go under EPPP. And it was exciting, but I didn't feel as though I was coaching anymore. So I would coach in a development centre here and there, but we had coaches that did that, and I had to work with the coaches, which was good. And then I'd go to the academy, and there was academy age group coaches. So I never really had any coaching opportunities, and I was really keen to try to latch on to something like that to keep me developing as a coach. And because it was a bit twofold, really, John never saw me as a coach because my role was in development.
Right.
But then at the same time, I couldn't get onto that next level of showing him what I was about as a coach because I wasn't getting the airtime. So he was honest and said where he felt it was going to, I could take the role and what he felt my strengths were within it. But I really had like a bit more of a bug for coaching.
Yeah.
So it sort of turned my eyes towards that. And Bournemouth was a club in obviously a big transitional period. The money that they've got and, the direction that they've ended up going in was really clear to see. The fact of living in such a beautiful area was a real attraction. But the biggest attraction of all was the fact that I was going down there to coach every day, to work with the under-18s, to be able to get my first real opportunity to actually work with youth team players every single day and develop them, but develop myself as a coach. And it was I just felt it was a fantastic opportunity, but one that really fitted with the sort of direction that I wanted to go in a little bit more.
Yeah. How did that come about? Did you apply for it? Was it through someone else? What?
Yeah, a bit of everything really. There's a guy called Sean Brooks who was head of the academy down there at the time. He and Paul Groves. Paul had been assistant to Harry Redknapp and Avram Grant at a couple of different clubs, and they were in the academy role and had been promoted to the first team. So we're looking for replacement. Sean had been a player at Orient and someone that I'd sort of stayed in touch with and talked football a lot on the phone. But it was no more than that really. And it sort of come to a point where he said, look, we're putting a shortlist together. Would you be interested? And then it became a bit more of an interview process. Went down and met the director of football and, the people that were responsible for a bit more of the interview process. So I didn't apply. He came to me and said to me, look, these are, we're putting together 3 or 4 people. We'd be keen to have a chat with you. And then it sort of escalated from there, really.
Yeah. And then at that period of time when you were working with the youth team, you obviously enjoyed that, I'd imagine, from day one, did you?
Yeah, everything. Like I say, the club was really, you could tell, and they didn't get off to a very good start that season. And that was just before the period when Eddie Howe came back to the club. But you could tell it was going somewhere. There was good investment. There was really, really good, if not above League One level players coming to the club. People like Matt Ritchie, Charlie Daniels, Tommy Elphick, the players like that who had a massive impression on that club. Brett Pittman's re-signed. David James even come in for a short period. So it showed the intent of where the club wanted to go towards. But living in a great area was really, really nice. But just the work that I was doing with those players every day was really changing me, the way I was as a coach. It was really sort of starting to, I suppose, look at like really what working with older lads was about. And the real biggest eye opener once I got down there was realising about the different types of kids I was working with.
Yeah.
I'd grown up in Walthamstow, East London. I'd worked at Leyton Orient with, kids from a lot of tough backgrounds. And even if they weren't, it was kids that go to school with those types of kids. So they had different characteristics of kids that were inside an inner city. And same at Spurs, massive part of our recruitment was on all those tough areas to try and get certain types of kids into the academy. And then I went down there, and all of a sudden, it was like these nice kids from Bournemouth every day. And I just assumed it would be a walk in the park, but I had to win them over in a different manner, and get to grips with what they were about as kids. And that was the biggest part of, almost, I suppose, not it being about coaching straight away. It was about the personality side of me and them, really.
Yeah, it's interesting that, because you're coaching out in Dubai, you get kids who are obviously live a lovely lifestyle, are used to certain things, and you have to treat them. You don't get the same kind of issues that you might get in England, but you get the, I suppose, the drive, determination, the grit that you talk about. That's usually is different. Did you find that with those players they didn't quite have what maybe some of the drive, or what was it like?
Yeah, it was interesting. I wouldn't, I'd probably not say drive. I would say they probably had more knowledge about them, about what training looked like, what coaching should look like, what they'd been used to. There was quite a strong philosophy at Bournemouth in terms of the way that you delivered your session. It was quite strict in terms of lots of like set movements and set ways of receiving the ball. And I sort of went in with a little bit more, tried to be a little bit more relaxed and creative in the way that I was asking them to do things, and probably a little bit different to what they'd asked or what they'd been used to. So the boys were a little bit sort of wary of me to begin with. And like I say, probably like similar to what you're saying that you get there, he's probably been coached since they were 4 or 5 in a soccer school, do you know what I mean? And refined all their techniques. But a lot of the kids I'd been used to had that like little edge, and probably maybe a little bit more creative, had a little bit more of an edge to them.
Yeah.
But not quite refined, as refined technically. So I had to work really hard. And the big thing as well for down there was, at the time, the club was in sort of 3 different venues. So the first team were trained where they train now, right on top of the stadium. The 23s trained in a private school, 21s in a private school up the road. And then I was at a place near the airport with the youth team. So I was out on my own a lot. And it was brilliant. It was great. It wasn't glamorous, the venue that we had. Most times the 21s or the first team took my goalkeepers. So I had to think about sessions to do every day that was going to work for us, that didn't involve goalkeepers. And so from a coaching point of view, it was massively eye-opening like that. But like I say, at the same time, those relationships I had to build with them become the more important thing that I was doing every day. And the great thing now is that I still speak to 4 or 5 of them. I still hear from them every now and again. They're grown up, they've got kids, and I think that's a sign that we come together and it worked quite well, albeit for quite a short period.
Yeah, and I suppose that at that point, would you consider that as the first real setback in terms of coaching, like finding out what sometimes football can be like, with how it turned out?
Without doubt. Probably a bit naive at the time, but I would look back on that as the hardest point in my life in terms of, I had a 3-year-old daughter just about to start school. I had she was a bit older, she was 4, but my little boy was 1.5. So Mrs. was down there on her own, no one around her, no one familiar, quite a long way away from home, like I say, albeit a lovely, lovely part of the world. And it started to go a little bit wonky. Paul and Sean got the sack, and Eddie came back, and he was great. He was fantastic with me, really embraced me, really gave me a lot of time, and spent a lot of time talking to me about football and sharing his experiences, which was great. But then there was a bit of a power struggle at the top of the club at the time, and the 2 guys that were sacked, Paul and Sean, from the first team, ended up coming back and taking my job, really. So I sort of started to see it coming, but you sort of think, no, I'll be all right. And people treat me well here. And then one day that's it, you turn up for work and you ain't got a job and you've got an house and you've got 2 kids at home and you don't really know what the right way to turn is. So I think what it taught me was how to come through a time like that when I'd never been sacked before. Albeit everyone had talked about how ruthless football was, it never happened to me.
Yeah.
I thought I was around people that were good and that were on my side, and clearly they wasn't. And then how to approach those real disappointments and not be too bitter and try to turn it around. And I was bitter for a long, long time. And I still go back to Bournemouth now, and it hurts me because I want to live by the beach. But it hurt because I'd really worked hard over like a 10-month period to build all them relationships and try to fit in. Yeah. And then, like you say, just one day your whole world is upside down, and I'm thinking, where am I going to go work? What am I going to do? How am I going to do it? I sort of started coaching in a school just to get some work. Right. And I remember going to speak to a careers woman or a jobs woman because we wanted to stay in the area. And I remember saying to her, I just don't know where I'm going to go to do what I want to do. And she went to me, yeah, because the problem is you've only got the country in front of you. I said, I don't know what you're talking about. She said, well, if you turn around, the sea's there. She said, so you've got no job in that direction. All the jobs are in that direction. I've been thinking, oh my God, you're supposed to be in charge of my career. Like, where am I going? So yeah, it was tough, but I was fortunate that I started to put myself out there a little bit more. Like I say, I went out and started working in a school because I'd like to think I've always got that in my locker, that I'm not too proud. I know where I want to go and what I want to be and what I want to do now. But if it don't, I'm not afraid of going and getting my hands dirty in another capacity. So I did that, and then an opportunity came up at Norwich. Fortunately, unfortunately, whatever way you want to look at it, we were on the verge of selling our house back home, and it hadn't quite gone through. So we went through it, and albeit we lost out a lot, we moved back home, and I got an opportunity to do like a recruitment role at Norwich. Yeah.
And how did that go? How was that at Norwich?
If you spoke to the Norwich people, not particularly well, because again, 10 months I lasted at Bournemouth, and then I lasted a year at Norwich, and I got made redundant because they got relegated from the Premier League. So almost like last one in, first one out. So I don't hold a particular amount of bitterness towards anyone off of that front, but it was a recruitment role, and I didn't know what it was. We spoke about it, but then going out and doing it was really tough. I had a lot of time where I spent during the day at home, and then I'd go out and watch games in the evening, or I'd go to a regional centre. So across the southeast, we had a load of regional centres, and we'd go and I'd go and manage them and coach on them. But I didn't really know how to watch an individual until then. I'd never done it, really. Now I think about it. I was going and watching games and coming home and getting in a car and speaking to people and going, yeah, I've just been and watched Colchester's under-10s, and I can't understand why they get their kids to do this. And that weren't my job. My job was to go and watch the kid that I was supposed to be watching, and then get that in the car and do a report and send the report in and not worry about it anymore. But because I loved football, I wanted to know why the striker was making that run and the winger was coming in off the line, or the intricacies, and that wasn't my job. So I was rubbish at it because I wasn't doing it well enough.
But it seems like there wasn't too much guidance there, though, with the role.
No, I think the other thing that was a little bit different for me was Norwich were looking for players outside of Norwich, and it again goes back to the Bournemouth Dubai sort of comparison. Very similar, out on its own, middle of nowhere. Yeah. And very similar types of kids that come into the academy every day. So they were in London, in the outskirts of wherever we were, trying to recruit different profiles of players. And some of the profiles of players that I was looking for didn't fit with me. Right. But I wasn't doing a job for me. I wasn't recruiting players for Leyton Orient anymore, or for Tottenham, where I was in charge of it. It was what I was being told to go out and look for. So I think I found that bit quite hard as well. That some of the players I was looking at, I was thinking, really, is this kid really going to be a Premier League footballer or a Championship footballer in the longer term? But when you're working for someone else, you have other responsibilities. So I realise now what I should or should have been doing for those people back then. But like I say, I didn't feel as though I was particularly good at it on that front. Yeah, and the time then you went. Did you go back to Tottenham then? Yeah. that was a Football and Community Foundation role again. So they're obviously quite popular now, especially in this country, 16 to 18 education and football program in Essex. And I thought I was going to manage a program with kids off a tower, you know, like blonde hair, blue eyes, you know, all talking about what birds they were going to pull of a weekend. And I turned up, and it was a college that was underperforming, and it was all the kids from East London that couldn't get in any of the other colleges that end up on this program. And no word of a lie, I was like Coach Carter for 18 months. It was carnage. We had stabbings, muggings, like some of the things that went on every day were mind blowing. We had a knife pulled out at one of our games where a kid phoned it, and a gang turned up. Like we got a police escort out of the ground. It was carnage. But it went from that, and in 18 months we went from having like 30 players who didn't turn up for games to having, I think we left it with 92 participants, 3 teams, you know. And like when I look at some of the relationships I've built with some of them in prison, don't get me wrong, but some of them have really come a long way, and I still speak to them, and they're proper kids, you know, and have sort of come out the other side of that experience, different lads. So albeit I always remember that when I left to go to Swindon, the last session I ever did was I coached a 4-3-3 phase of 11v11, and I remember standing there as I walked off thinking, I've just done an 11v11 with this bunch of lunatics, and 18 months ago they were all stabbing and shooting and mugging each other, and it was like an unbelievable achievement. It sounds petty, and people think, well, it don't really mean anything, but it comes such a long way. Yeah. From no one wanting to turn up and it being almost like a hindrance in their lives to being able to tell someone to tuck in when the ball's on the other side of the pitch. Do you know what I mean?
No, I mean that was what I was going to ask next, actually, in terms of you know, the roles and jumping forward to where you are now, and once you reflect back, is the reward, because that's obviously from a coaching perspective, and there's a lot of rewards you get out of coaching young players, seeing their development, what have you. Would that be considered one of your, you know, your beating achievements as such?
Massively, because I suppose it, like you look back on the particular roles or the particular times in your career where you say, oh, that was a massive achievement, or I've seen him gone on to do that. And like I said right at the beginning, for me, I'm proud of what I've done and what I've been involved with and how I've got to where I've got. But it's been some real strange scenarios in order to get there. And you know, everyone has rocky roads and it's not all plain sailing. But when I look at how that period was for me, like I say, when I talk about the stabbings, that's not a loose comment. Like, right. We were at a game and a lad pulled a knife out, and I was the one in the end that ended up, kid was 6'3", standing there with a Stanley knife in his hand. And because I knew him and because I'd worked with him, and he was a lunatic, but I always say to people, he was my lunatic. And I know that if I was ever in trouble, he'd have helped me out. Yeah. And I remember having him on the floor, pinned down to the floor. And I remember thinking, you read them stories or listen to the news and an headmaster gets stabbed to death, and you think, what on earth are you getting involved in that for? But when it's kids you care about, you just go, like something takes over, and you get on with it in a similar fashion to, I suppose, you would with your own kids. Do you know what I mean? And you want to get them out of trouble or you know, or resolve the situation for the best way for them. And when I look at where it got to in the end, it was incredible, really.
Yeah, fair play, mate. Fair play. And then obviously Swindon. So you go like from taking a community under 18 team and all that went with that to going to Swindon as first team coach. Yeah.
Again, like referring to anyone in any walk of life, people say that, you know, there's always elements of luck in what you do. There's, you know, you get the who. It's not who, what you know, it's who you know. But I think that exists. But unless you put yourself in those positions and you're hardworking and good at what you do, or try to be good at what you do, I don't think that always can be true to what you say. But Martin Lingwood had been the first team manager at Orient when I was given the Centre of Excellence job. And we'd always stayed in touch. I'd coached his boy, Sam, who's now in my first team squad at Orient as a sort of 5-6-year-old. So for a number of different reasons, we'd always stayed in touch. And Martin had suffered with real severe mental health and had come out of management himself. And I'd got him doing a few bits and pieces at Spurs, some global stuff, going abroad, and sort of a coming together of a few things, really. A good friend of mine was the assistant manager at Swindon at the time. Mark Cooper had just left, and obviously with Martin's association with playing in the Premier League for Swindon, he got the first team job, and I was sort of like the common denominator, really. Luke knew me, Martin knew me, but they didn't really know each other.
Yeah.
So I sort of went in as like I suppose the third member of staff, the first team coach. So it was great because I knew them both, but didn't realise quite how daunting and different it was going to be until I arrived, really.
Yeah, that was going to be my question there. Going into that environment then, from being out of the game, the professional game for a little while, that must have been pretty hard, was it?
Yeah, I mean, just a bit strange because I think, like, as coaches, we all think that the coaching is the most important thing, and I think probably what we've already spoken about today probably tells you that I don't. But we get hung up on like a session near a pole there, and how many mannequins we need, and the bibs and numbers in your session. But I realised when I got there that it wasn't really about that. First of all, no one knew who I was, so that had an aspect. I'm sure if I was, someone else, Frank Lampard, for argument's sake, you have that immediate grasp of respect from people, and I had to earn that. And I realised straight away within the first session that I did, within like a week or 10 days, that I could feel people looking at me going, "Hold on a minute, who's this geezer and what's he all about?" And I had to win them over. I had to win them over that I was all right, but then I had to show them that I had a bit of an idea of what I was talking about and that I could deliver. And in the early stages, I was working a lot with the players that weren't in the squad. So you can imagine a team that were bottom when we went there. Players that are out of the team, not only are people not happy, but they're bottom of the league as well. Do you know what I mean? So they were disgruntled characters, but it was about just trying to chip away and show people that I was, like I say, all right as a person. But then that I had good intentions and I wanted to work hard and give them good sessions. And then all of a sudden, they start to look and then start to realise that they like the finishing practice that you put on, or the passing drill at the beginning. But it sort of didn't really seem too relevant at the beginning. Yeah. But on top of that, in terms of how daunting it was, I remember we won our first game. Then we went away from home and we got beat 5-1. And there was a full-blown punch-up in the changing room. And I remember thinking, what have I done? What have I done? I've done it again. I was staying away from home like 3 or 4 nights a week. Missus and the kids stayed at home. And I remember thinking, what have I done? What? I've come here, we're bottom of the league. There's a fight. What have I done here? I've set myself back again. But we quickly stabilised things, and Martin came away sick and fell ill with mental health again, and Luke took over as manager. So it was just the pair of us, but he done really well, and we turned things around and finished sort of mid-table. So it ended up being quite a comfortable finish from where we'd gone in and had to take over from.
Yeah, what players did you have there at that point? Was it like a squad of like ex players who journeymen, or what was it? What was the mix?
They'd just lost in the playoff final the year before to Preston, and they'd had a lot of the boys from. They had Jack Stevens, who's now obviously playing at Southampton. Nathan Thompson was a captain, who's now at he's not at Peterborough now. Then they had like the likes of Massimo Luongo, who went on to QPR, Ben Gladwin, who went to QPR. So a lot of young players that come out of academies that had a strong link with Spurs. Pritchard had been there, Mason had been there for a little while.
Connor Thomas there then? No,
Connor came the year after. So the year after that, we signed Connor. What didn't happen really on our second season is we'd finished really strong and everyone was really confident about kicking on. And from a recruitment perspective, we didn't do it well enough. I think the chairman had a real strong view on sign young, develop, sell them on, because he'd had success of doing that. And we tried to do it, but the club tried to do it too big. Right. And we didn't have enough stability. We didn't have enough people that were capable at the level at the time. And we struggled. And halfway through that season was when Tim Sherwood come in as manager, director of football.
Right. And how was he?
We're trying to guess what it was he was doing at the time. Yeah, it was hard. It was hard because I'd worked with Tim at Spurs. Tim had been great to Luke and I when Martin had gone sick. He was really supportive after he'd come out at Villa. he supported Luke a hell of a lot, and he come to our games, and he was really good. And I think obviously his time had ended at Villa and his contract, etc. And he came in and sort of took a director of football role, and then he sort of started to get involved a little bit more and pick the team and take training. And me and Luke sort of found ourselves on the fringes of it all. And then he sort of sat in the stand and left us to be on the side of the pitch, and it just had no real order. We needed some experience in January, and we signed three young boys from Chelsea, and it felt like we were only ever going to get to one destination, and it was hard. But like I say, if I hadn't have done it, I wouldn't be sitting where I am now. If I hadn't have done it, I would never have had a real understanding of what working in a first team environment was about. And at the same time, going through a relegation like that, prepares you for a hell of a lot of things that come after it.
Yeah. And
albeit I found myself out of work again.
The resilience is unbelievable, by the way. But so then, how did you end up back at Orient? How did that materialise?
So the club was in a bad way. The Italians had taken it off Barry Earn 2 or 3 seasons before, back-to-back relegations from League One to League Two, and then from League Two to the National League. It didn't look like the club was going to exist. That was how desperate it was. Thankfully, a consortium took over of like the major investor. He's an American guy called Kent Teague, and the chairman, he's a Leyton Orient fan, grew up in Leyton but lives in America. Spent most of his career living and working in America. Worked for companies like Dunkin' Donuts, Papa John's. I met him,
didn't I? Nigel Travis. I met him in Miami.
Conference. That's right. Of course you did. Sorry, mate. Great. Both of them great people, and had a real strong board behind them with a real mixture of people on it. But it took a long time to get done. So I kept getting calls saying, "Oh, the club might be taking over." Not that there was ever going to be any opportunity for me, but just to tell me how the club was getting on, because it was a concern. And then one day I was told that I had an interview to be with someone about potential opportunity going and working at Woking. And I was walking in the door of the Marriott Hotel to meet the manager and director of football. And as I got in there, my phone went, and it was Martin Ling saying, "The club's been taken over. They've offered me the director of football role. I don't know what job you're going to do, but there's one for you next week." The club was that up in the air. Never had a bank account. We never had any equipment. We never had the whole club was gone, shot to bits. But I turned up on the first day, and he just said, "I need you to get the football organised for me. We've got 9 players, all under 21. I need you to just start taking training because pre-season had already started 2 weeks previously." So he said, "I just need you to get on with that, and then I'm going to go and sign a load of players and try and get us a squad together." Honestly, it was hilarious, really. So I went in and took a week's training, and then he pulled me one day and said, "Look, we're going to bring in a manager, but we want you to be in the assistant's role, and then we'll bring all the other staff in around us as we grow." So incredible to look back on and build the club up from scratch to what it was fantastic. And then obviously someone that you would be quite aware of was Steve Davis came in as the manager at that time.
Yeah, and how was he? Because obviously that was his time at Crewe had finished, and how was he to work with?
I really liked Steve. I really liked him. I loved what his football was about. You could heavily feel and sense the Crewe connection. Talked about Dario a lot, talked about Crewe a lot, but it never got boring. Sometimes you work with people and they give it when I worked at so-and-so, and you think, yeah, all right, that'll do. But Steve was never boring because it was always real, like, coaching, real, like, development, real interest in football.
Yeah.
So there was never any boring conversations. He was a really good man. Loved his coaching. To be honest, I worked with him and he coached a lot. So actually, from my perspective, it took away sort of what I'd become after he left.
Yeah.
A lot of my other stuff was about organisation and the extra bits and work and development work that I did with the players. So that was different, but I liked it. He was good. But he had a real tough time. The club, like I say, never had a pre-season. We had a 3-week pre-season. Went into the National League. We started really well. We were second after 8 games, and it looked like it was going strong. We lost our 3 most experienced players, 2 centre-halves and a deep midfield player, and it just started to snowball from there. Really went badly quickly. We were very close on a lot of occasions to getting more results than we did, but unfortunately for Steve, we were on like a 15-game run without a win, and I think the board tried their best to sort of keep it going in the hope that he could turn it around, but it didn't quite come. I think it was a real lack of knowledge from us as a club, from probably myself and Steve, of the National League at times and what it was about, because we were
or in terms of players or teams you're playing against.
Both. I think the lack of understanding of what the league was all about and the acceptance of the ball being out of play a lot more than it need. You know, we would like to have seen it, and teams just coming and making your life a misery. And some of the tactics from a non-league attitude type perspective were very tough to get to grips with. And I think we had a few players that come out of league football that also found it quite difficult to understand. But like I say, we were very, very close on a number of occasions to getting more wins than we got. But it came to a point where the club made the decision to remove Steve. So I took the team for 3 games before Justin Edinburgh came in as the new manager.
Yeah. And like Justin obviously had been at a number of clubs, and he was at Newport and before that, and done obviously very well. Where else did he? Was it Colchester? Was it Colchester?
Yeah, he done non-league really. Rushton and Diamonds.
Jimmy Dack with him, wasn't it?
Yeah, and then he went to Newport.
Yeah,
and I think he might have been with him at Newport, wouldn't he?
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, because I was on. I was on a coaching course with Jimmy, and he was his assistant at that point, and then they were at Newport then. Yeah.
Yeah, so he come out of Newport and went to Gillingham.
Yeah,
really good first season and a bit at Gillingham, and then he came to us. So yeah, it was quite interesting because when he got the job, I'd had a bit of a run-in with him when I was at Swindon on the side.
Right.
The game had got a bit heated, and we both went to grab the ball, and his assistant or goalie coach shoved me, and then he come flying over and give me a load of words, and I was thinking, I'm going to last about 5 minutes with this geezer. But he turned up and quickly showed that there was more to him than just that aura and say a front. It sounds like I'm talking him down. I don't mean it like that at all. That little bit of an edge that he had. But there was more to him than that as a bloke, more than anything else that I enjoyed or got from working with him.
Yeah, I mean, I know how much you obviously thought of him, and what were those characteristics that he had, and what you did together at the club and created something that special.
He was a proper geezer.
Yeah.
He was a proper geezer. He was a 90s footballer in terms of like how he saw the game, how he expected people to work, lived his life to the maximum. So if you had a beer, he'd have 10 beers. But he'd get out the next morning and go for a run with a black plastic bag on him to sweat it out. You know, that sort of attitude. We used to go in the gym and go on the running machine before he used to come. And then when he turned up, he took it to another level, and it was like sprints on the running machine because he just had that all or nothing attitude. Brilliant with people in terms of, and like I say, when I say there was none of this, try this technique to get the best out of him. He was just straight and honest and normal with people. And I think the lads loved that, created a really good environment. He gave, from a selfish point of view, but I know from the other staff that worked from him, just gave you the responsibility to crack on with things. So never, ever, very rarely did he, well, I can't remember many occasions him ever saying to me, no, don't do that this morning.
Right.
We can do it. It was him come to me, like, what we're doing training, mate? And I'd say, we're doing this, bit of that. And he might go to me, if you're doing 11v11, don't do it for too long. Like the boys have been playing a lot of football or manage the minutes. But other than that, never really went to me, no, I don't want you to do crossing and finishing today. He just left me to my job, and he was the same like that with the analysts, same like that from a sports science point of view, until it come to the running in pre-season, and that all got swept away, and the boys had to do a lot of hard work. But he gave you trust and responsibility. And like I say, and he was straight and honest with people, and I think the lads loved it. The lads loved it, and it's something that I ain't nowhere near mastered, but something that I've definitely taken from him about. It's almost easier. It's easier to be honest with people than to try and sugarcoat things and talk around things and make stuff up. He was really, really good like that.
Yeah. And when he came in, did you bring in a number of players, or did he just galvanise a squad, or what?
No, he took the squad that we had. He one or two that he moved on quite quickly weren't for him, and he made those decisions quite quickly. And what I liked about it was he told the lads that he didn't want, and then said to him, listen, you're fine, you're here. We're going to work with you. The coaches will, they'll work with you and do your work with you, but you're not going to play. You're not going to get in the team. This is the direction I want to go in. So it's best that you start to look elsewhere. I think it was quite fair, as harsh as it was. It was fair and honest. And we only recruited 2 players that summer. So we finished mid-table, a little bit like Swindon. We were in a bad place when he came in, but we finished mid-table. And built up a real head of steam. It was real good atmosphere, real good energy about the atmosphere to the place, real strong togetherness. And you felt like we were going to come back and do all right. I don't think anyone expected us to win the league. To go from 13th to win it is a massive jump, but we recruited 2 players that summer, so it was a massive turnaround. And it was the attitude to the league, respected the league, but it was like, this is what it's about. These are the things that it takes. These are the liberties that you can't take. These are the attitudes that you need in order to win games of football in that league at that level.
Yeah, I mean, it must have been a special season. Was it going up and I've obviously seen a lot of videos and pictures and interviews.
You know what's really strange, Chris, is like the pressure when you're getting relegated is horrible, because you're turning up most weeks thinking, please let us get a point. Please let us somehow nick a win, knowing that you're not really very good. And you think that, that's the worst pressure ever to be under. But when you're getting off the coach and your fans outweigh the opposition's fans at their stadium, and you win we go unbeaten in the first 14 games of the season, you think, oh my God, we have to win today. Yeah. Do you know what I mean? And then all of a sudden you're playing at home and you're playing Maidenhead and they don't bring anyone, but we've got 6,000 people. The actual pressure, I didn't realise how big it is. Don't get me wrong, it's the greatest achievement in my football career. The celebrations and how it all ended was incredible, but the last 5 games of the season were worse than getting relegated, because you just wanted to get it done and wanted to win, and you turn up and just think, please just let us win. Yeah, please just let us win. The pressure got to the point where the performances weren't great, but it was about finding a way to win, which I never ever thought I'd hear myself say it. But you got yourself to a point where it was like, we have to win our game today. And then we don't have to worry about what the others behind us are doing and how they get on. We just worry about ourselves. So it's a strange feeling. That's why when you win it and you see those over-the-top celebrations, if you like, the release is just frightening. We turned up on the last day of the season and it needed to be us lose, the team below us win, and a 7-goal swing. We're playing the team that were bottom of the league. It was never going to happen, but I couldn't smile for the whole game until the final whistle went, because it was just so intense because of everything you'd done. The pressure had built up so much.
And was that, do you think that's even intensified because of your links to the club, because of your history with the club? Would it have been the same at another club, or is it just made it even?
I hope I find out one day in terms of that success. He said, I got sent off. With about 6 games to go. It had been a real bad tackle and the ref missed it. And I went into one and I got sent off. And he never pulled me, never had a dig at me or anything. And then the next day we went in, and because we always have the Thursday off, so we always used to train the next morning. And we went in and he pulled me and he just said to me, I know how much this means to you. But you've let yourself down, and I don't want it to affect you and the boys and and what happened. So it was his way of pulling me in line, but at the same time he sort of said to me, and it was then that I thought, yeah, actually, yeah, he's right, like this does mean a lot to me. I've seen so much at this club. I've had a season ticket here and all those sorts of things. I hadn't really thought about it, and that's when I think there is that extra, extra connection, that extra association with being involved at that club, which I think did probably add a little bit more pain to the whole experience of getting over the line.
Yeah. I mean, obviously when Justin passed away, I don't know how you can describe how difficult it would be, to deal with what you had to deal with, and to then take on, the mantle, the interim with the club. How did you deal with that?
I still couldn't tell you. I wish I'd written it down, but at the time you're just going through every emotion and trying to think, how do I get everyone back on track? So I do wish I'd noted it better, because I can tell a story now that no one else in the world can tell, in terms of having to replace a manager that's just passed away, but just won the league as well. If he'd have decided he was going to go to, I don't know, Man United without me, you'd be disappointed that he hadn't taken me with him. But I'd have been able to say, well, that's what he's gone on to do, and he's made his choices. But it hadn't. It seemed so unfair that he'd been taken away from his family. I think I always have to say that, is that we'd lost a football manager, but they'd lost a dad and a husband. Do you know what I mean? So that was a massive part of things. But I do wish I'd documented more in terms of how I dealt with certain scenarios. But it was just survival, really. The first thing that I did, I was away when he passed away. I was away out with the chairman in America, and the director of football, and 2 players. We were doing like a coaching experience thing out there, and I just said to them all that I don't see that it's fair on bringing someone new in. Someone will want to take the job, but how can he stand there and try and replace this guy? So if you feel it's right for the club, I'm willing, happy to step in and take that responsibility for however long you need me to. It might only be a couple of weeks until you think it's right. It might be a year, but leave it with me. I'll do everything that I can. And it was just about, in the beginning, to show everyone that I'm hurting and I'm grieving like you all are, but I'm actually coming to work every day, and I'm going to be stone-faced and try and put on a front to make sure that you've all got a job to come to, because otherwise the place is going to fall apart, and who knows where we're going to end up. And try and put just some stability. And the one phrase that we used right from the beginning was, we're just going to find some stability and try and find what normal is. Yeah. And that was always sort of our go-to thing. And when people were having meltdowns and crying their eyes out and grieving in the way that they were doing it, it was all right. Because, it's like you go work with a group of blokes every day. You don't want to be seen to be weak or... Yeah. Or suffering in any sort of way. You want to be strong, and that ain't the right way to go about it. So we needed to sort of try and create an atmosphere and an area in the training ground where people could go when they needed that bit of time to themselves. So I think the one thing that, it's been a massively topsy-turvy season, but until the sort of changes in the middle of the year were made, however anyone likes it, and fans will always look and say, well, we're in the bottom half of the league, things weren't going great, we should have won more games, whatever else. But we had to go to work and live without someone that had meant so much to us. So it was tough, and a little bit like I said there with Swindon, it was really tough scenario, living away from home and going through relegation. Well, I feel bulletproof after what I've had to go through this season, in terms of stepping into a job I didn't want to do at the time. Yeah. I wanted to be Justin Edinburgh's assistant, and and for us to carry on the momentum that we'd found. And then all of a sudden, next thing I knew, I was replacing him, but replacing him in the context that I had to.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned earlier about you think what coaching, putting your cones out and your mannequins and whatever, but that side of things that no one should have to deal with, and but the I suppose the relationships then you with the players mean so much more, don't they? It's not just about football anymore, is it? It's everything else, and obviously Justin's family and stuff like that. Yeah. When, and then is it Carl Fletcher who came in then as the manager? Yeah. And I actually think when I was in America, when I spoke to she sat to sit down with Nigel, and then I think I think was it November that he'd left? Yeah. And he just was it right? It just wasn't the right fit. He wasn't what you tried to create, was it, at Leyton Orient?
Yeah, I think what happened was a number of things. The board first said to me, when we come to finding the successor, we want you here still, and we want that person to come in and work with you. But when we started to talk about it, I said it was unfair for me to be involved in any recruitment process, because if I was coming in to work with someone and I knew he'd been working with a board for a couple of months to recruit me, I'd be satisfied that person had played a role. But then at the same time, I think I'd be thinking, hang on a minute, how close is he to the board? What's he going to tell him? I wanted that person to have full trust in me, like Steve had, like Justin had, that they felt I was on their side. And that was always the message I put across to the three of them, is that I work for you. They pay my bills and they're my seniors, but my first port of call is to do right by you. So I wanted to play that role properly until Carl came in, and it gave me the opportunity to continue to focus on the team until he got appointed. But it was tough because he was a good guy. He had real good intentions. Obviously, he'd come from Bournemouth. He's had an excellent playing career. Played at the very top. But came in and I feel found it quite hard to sort of build those relationships. I don't know if that's his personality on a whole, because I didn't get to work with him long enough in order to discover that. But I found it quite hard to sort of build relationships with the players, and probably similarly with some of the staff. And then at the same time, the results didn't work particularly great. But then I feel like I said there, where the relationships hadn't particularly hit the ground running, it become very hard for him then, when you're losing games of football, to justify what goes on day to day. And I think the criticism that I'm sure a number of people would hold for the board is that they removed him very, very quickly from his position. But then I think the flip side of that is, the other side is, you could have said, well, let's carry on for a little bit longer, and then who knows where it goes and what you end up. So I think it was bold. I think it was brave of them to admit they'd got it wrong. But then at the same time, like I always maintain, a man lost his job, and family would have been deeply upset about it. And it's not anything that you ever want to wish on someone to have to go through that.
Yeah. And then, so you got to see, is this the third time that you've been interim manager?
It was, yeah. So they put me back in as interim manager and pretty much said to me, listen, we can't afford to make another change, see it through to the rest of the season, which is something I'd always said I would have done. But when it came to that point, when Carl got appointed, or they started to look for him, they said to me, we feel you've done the job well. You've carried us through this tough period. We want to make it more permanent. But my thing was, I don't think I really want to be a manager. I felt I was still managing Justin's team, which made it really hard. I wanted to be my own man, but at the same time, I felt like I was really having to follow in his footsteps. As much as I loved that fall, it's on me and he was him, and we were very, very different, which is potentially why it worked the way that it did for the pair of us. But I was finding that very, very hard. So I said to him, yet again, like I am, I'm willing to take it on, and I feel we'll be comfortable to stabilise ourselves for the rest of the season. And what came apparent then is, as we got to Christmas, it became quite clear that the boys needed stability. They needed to know who was going to be in charge. Yeah. And I think then, once I'd come through that period with Carl, I'd had a chance to reflect on what I'd done as interim manager after Justin had passed away. It gave me the opportunity to then start looking and thinking, it's been bloody hard. Is this what I want to do? And also at the same time, do I feel like I can do it after doing it in these extreme circumstances? And I suppose a little bit like come to a point where I sort of thought life's too short. Yeah. And it's worth, sometimes worth taking a gamble, taking a risk, taking an opportunity. What you can call it or blame it on a number of different things, but just felt, no, do you know what? I'm going to really throw myself into it. And I think since the turn of the year, our home form changed dramatically. Once that decision had been made, we found a system, a shape, a way of playing. I did, and then it helped the players. Yeah. So before we went into lockdown, things looked like that we were certainly stable, and we were finding normal, which was our quote at the start of the season. But a bigger thing in terms of looking towards the future, it was about the way that we were going to go and play. Yeah,
and I mean, like stability, you talked about a couple of times, or 2 or 3 times, but like stability for yourself as well, surely, because that, with all these different things that have happened, that to get that, you are the manager, the head coach of Leyton Orient Football Club, must have been a massive thing for you.
Yeah, I mean, it was massive for me when I'd done the interim roles. I've had enough of them now that it sort of started to wear off a little bit. But it was massive, incredible thing for me, and not just for me, but my dad, but like my mum, my dad, like my mum's granddad, so my great granddad he was chairman of the supporters club way back when. So the association with the club is incredible. So for my family and for me and my kids. Yeah. Adore Leyton Orient. So it was like I had to spend weeks going into pubs and taking my little boy over the park and him walking in the park and telling people that his dad was Leyton Orient manager. It was such a massive thing for everyone. And I think the real big thing for me has always been that I am me, and I've always had a viewpoint that for me to be successful, I've got to be really good at what I do in this job. And I was always quite sceptical of the fact that I didn't want to step into this world, because I felt like if it goes wrong, what else do I do? I've then got a tag as a manager. But in the end, I sort of start to think to myself, you know what? Put your neck on the line, be brave, be good at what you do. And then what happens after that? You deal with the consequences, or whatever way that it's going to go. But incredibly proud to have the opportunity. And you know what meant a huge amount to me was real major people on the board and at the club sat me down and told me how well I'd done, what I'd changed, the direction that I was taking us in, and it reassured me immensely. They didn't have to do it. Martin Ling, the director of football, told me a lot about how much belief he had in me doing the job, but he's someone I've worked for a number of years, and it didn't quite have as much impact. I don't want to take that away from him, but hearing it from people on the board that they really wanted me to be their manager was an immense feeling.
Yeah, brilliant. I know, I mean, Nigel spoke very highly of you when I was out in America, so it was good to hear. And I mean, obviously very, very proud that you know, and how well you've done there. It's fantastic. And I mean, going forward, see with the COVID thing, and again, that must be frustrating, isn't it? When you kind of get a bit of momentum in the job and then it's had to stop. But talking to you just before you come on, and you know, you said that you've got with the squad there, you've got a. It's not like you've been affected too badly like a lot of other squads out there. You're going to lose a lot of players. So that stability that you mentioned is what you're looking forward to for next season or whatever happens at this moment in time.
Yeah, I think with part of my frustration of not finishing the season was I didn't want us to finish 17th in the league. You know, I've been, as soon as I got the job, my big thing to the players was momentum, build, because it's what we done that when Just came in, we really built. Then come back and did what we did in that year. So I felt like if we come back with that momentum next season, off the back of the last 10 games that we missed out on, that we could have really changed our season around and finished mid-table, which is what we would have taken at the start of the season, and come back with that feel of knowing what we're about, but you know, a real good feel-good factor about the place in order to kick on. To feel like that pulled us away a little bit, but then at the same time, we might go back a little bit under the radar now in terms of. They're only 17th and sort of forget about what Leyton Orient are about, and you know, hopefully go back and catch people off guard. I think with the squad, you know, from the club's perspective, there's a big financial burden on them because we've got so many people still in contract. But the conversations that I've had with my staff over the break has been, let's go back and embrace whatever comes. Yeah, we're all in this. It's a big opportunity for us all. Let's go back and kick on with it rather than go back and think, well, we could have had this should have happened. We want to sign that player. Well, if it don't happen, this is what we're going to do, and this is how we're going to make the best of it, and have a forward focus on it rather than coming back feeling sorry for ourselves. It's been the most ridiculous season in football history for me personally. And I said to someone the other day, I might one day win the Champions League as a manager. It probably won't make the book. His first season will take up most of the chapters. But like I say, we either worry about it and let it drag us down, or make sure that we're fully prepared. And like all coaches, I think like anyone that's serious about their job in any walk of life, we would have made the most out of watching football, watching us, watching the top players, watching the other games that are going to hopefully make us better, and obviously from a coaching and training level, make us, you know, more better prepared to go back and be ready to have a proper pre-season, a proper season in comparison to the one that we've just dealt with. Yeah.
So how do you see yourself now? Because like we had like Teddy Sheringham on a couple of weeks ago talking about like the coach or the manager, and you know, you've spent the long period of time being a coach, being a first team coach, and now you're the manager. How have you changed? Have you seen changes in yourself, or are you going to change in certain ways? How do you see it unfolding for you?
I think I'll always see myself as a coach because I love coaching, and that's where I said earlier that I feel like I can be flexible if I ever need to be, and you know, if I am an assistant or a coach or I'm working with a youth team again, I feel as though I love football and coaching enough to make that change. I think the things that I've noticed about myself is how comfortable I am with being looked upon as a manager. So I made some quite big decisions in a couple of games in the build-up to when I got the job permanently, and left a few people out and made some changes to the squad. And I remember waking up in the hotel that morning. We was away to Oldham and thinking, oh my God, I've got to sit with 6 players and tell them they're not playing today. And 4 of them were like big people in terms of us winning the league, lads that I'd grown really close to. And I'd done the meeting and we drew, and I dealt with the reaction the week after, and I could feel the walking in a room and people not laughing at me jokes no more. Not that they ever did, but it was like the manager's here, like, you know, I got a bit of a viewpoint, and I thought, do you know what, this is all right. I don't mind this.
Yeah.
And it adapted my relationship with a lot of the players. And I feel comfortable with that. And I think that's been the biggest part of it for me, is that I never really thought that I would be comfortable with being a manager, or being seen as a manager, or being treated like a manager, because of the way that I like to develop relationships with people. But what I've realised is that I can still do that. I just have different ones with them. And where I was the one that they came and moaned to and groaned to, and gave them sometimes the answers that they wanted to hear, but you know, portrayed the manager's decision in a way that made it a bit easier for them to listen to. Well, actually, I've sort of just taken the viewpoint of just be straight and honest with people, and they don't like it, but all I can do is be honest. And I think that's allowed me to have that viewpoint of myself a little bit more. Probably be really interesting for me in time to try to get that grasp of what the lads think, because they've seen it change for me over a 2 or 3 year period. Yeah,
brilliant. There's quite a few questions come through now, so some good ones I'll ask you. Billy Crowther, who I believe is in Sweden now. I think he last I heard he was over here in Dubai, and he was going to Sweden. But I hope you're well, Billy. Ross, Billy Crowther here, old youth player at Leyton Orient with your old man as manager. As a part of your youth development, do you think it's best going into the schools or attending games at the local leagues?
Do I think it's best?
Yeah.
I think from my perspective, I'm gonna refer to that a lot, because it's what I did.
Yeah.
It's where I went. That's what I still do. I'll be honest. I still go and coach my little boys team on a Wednesday evening and a Saturday morning, just because I love it and because I love to be part of it. So I think it'll always be something that I really feel is beneficial to people. And it's not just about loving it. It's about the real different scenarios that it gives you. You know, Chris, you turn up to those sessions and you thought you had 12 on the register and only 7 turn up, or another 5 kids are booked on, no one told you. You got to do it. You ain't got enough equipment. They're like cliche things that we use to talk about coaching, but they're the best things, because you got to find a way. You got to find a way of putting on sessions for people, and sessions that are fun and enjoyable. And at the same time, they're going to bring them back, because that's what it is a lot of the time at that, you know, with those sessions. It's about getting bums on seats and bringing more kids back to your sessions and making them love it. And that's the way that you bring them in. And I think that's always going to be the thing that I look to. And actually, it ain't too dissimilar in terms of, I want my players to come in and love training every day. I want them to love being at our football club. I want them to love going in the gym or doing the extra work that they've got to do. So I need to try and build that same feeling to them wanting to get up in the morning and come and work every day.
Yeah. No, brilliant. That's good to hear. And another good one that's very relevant to yourself there is Matt Carr's put, I'm currently under 16, under 18 head coach looking to make the jump to men's football. What advice would you give me?
Try to get the experience as soon as you can. And I think what I mean by that is, it might sound like a loose comment, but what I mean by that is he's getting access to working with adults. So obviously I don't know what context you mean, the working with 16s and 18s, but I think when I look back, the sessions I used to go and do with non-league teams, the sessions I used to go and do with, I had a season coaching and loosely managing a team that played on a Saturday afternoon. When I say a Saturday afternoon, it wasn't in a stadium and, you know, people being paid to do it. It was Saturday afternoon glamorised pub football. Do you know what I mean? But I worked with blokes and I found ways of making training enjoyable, because it's different to working with kids. making training something that they want to be part of, because you know that they've just taken their overalls off, or they're on their way home from the city and they've busted a gut to get to training. And I think things like that, albeit like the comparisons to what I'm working with now are massively different, it's still about trying to get the best out of people, making it an enjoyable experience. And I think as simple as it can sound, it is so different to doing it with men, with adults, and then like you say, with developing that towards working with pros and senior pros. The actual sessions and the details come, but it's about how you win people over and show people what your intentions are, that I think are just as important as where you put your cones.
Yeah, brilliant. Michael Brady. Michael he's here every week. Michael, it's good to see him back. He runs a UAE second division team. What's the greatest piece of advice you've had in your career, and from who? And how has that affected your performance as a coach and manager?
I would say that simplistically, the first thing that I promised myself that I would do, and I've referred to it already this evening, was my dad's always said to me, just be honest with people, just be straight with people. And I think I referred to it earlier, that once you do that, people have to respect your decision. They won't agree with it. And I've made decisions this year and said to people, I know you're disappointed, but this is the decision that I've made. And then it's about whether it comes off or not. I think that's been massive for me. Not that, and also not that it's a direct piece of advice, but my chairman has been hugely successful in business and has written a book on challenge culture and what he refers to as pushback. And he's really, really open. I remember him first telling me about it, and me thinking, yeah, that sounds great, but I don't really know how that looks. But I think that's been a massive part of what this club's become about, and certainly for me. And then how I deal with, they say managing up, but how I deal with senior people at the club, and then vice versa with the players. And I think learning how to give that challenge and kickback or pushback that he talks about towards people in senior positions has been massive for me. And then to be the one that receives the pushing back, the kickback, the challenge has been huge. So it's not a direct piece of information, but that challenge culture that he was so huge on creating across the club, I think is massive for me in terms of being able to give it and take it.
Brilliant. Andrew Hatcher, again, is a regular on here, and he's coaching at Havant, I think. When it comes to being in a challenging environment and to win, what advice can you give to working with a team to focus on performance whilst trying to lift pressure off?
Great question. Brilliant question. Yeah. I had just a little story to go with it before I answer it. Remind me to answer it, because I know I can go off tangent sometimes. But when I was in Boston and Justin had just passed away, Nigel, the chairman, took us out for dinner the night after. And we were sitting there and he brought something up at dinner, which is right. He said to me, obviously, when you're in first team football, winning is everything. And I said, yeah, winning is what keeps you in work and what makes us all successful or not. But at the same time, performance is everything for me. Because if we don't have something to hang on to, if we don't have something to build towards, which I went through the first half of the season, by the way, not having and not creating and not finding, makes it so hard. I can't analyse. I feel like you can't sit down and show a player where they're going right and wrong, because you haven't actually got anything to refer to, because the formation, the system, the shape, what I was asking of was so erratic and so irregular that really looking back, I couldn't be critical of what they were or weren't doing. So for me, performance is everything in order to be able to get the results that are everything, if that makes any sort of sense. And I think it was the biggest thing that I learned in the turn of the year and becoming the permanent manager was, right, what is it that I want? What is it that I need? And then how does that then obviously relate to winning and losing football matches? And the biggest thing that I then allowed me to do is, at the start with the pressure of everything, I found it really hard to watch my team standing on the side of the pitch, because I'd always been the one that could sit down in the dugout and watch the game. And then now all of a sudden I've got to be seen by the crowd and, be the manager, if that makes sense. And I found it hard to watch it. And it was about staying calm and being able to then analyse what my performances were like, and then the small, slow steps in order to enable us to get there.
Do you ever? Sorry, Ross. Have you ever found since that time of being that manager on the sideline do you feel a pressure from the crowd to react in a certain way? I've seen managers which I think are just playing up to the crowd, and there can't be a focus on the game because of what they're doing. Have you found that?
Yeah, I think I can understand it. I can understand that happening. What you say, I think I'm okay. I get very caught up in it. I think I've probably, before the lockdown happened, started to get to grip with the fact that it's Leyton Orient, but I'm the manager now, and you've got to try to manage the emotional side of that. But I do understand why it would be very, very easy for people to get caught up in the emotion and the crowd and what people are shouting and what they're being told from behind them, especially when it's going wrong. And then at the same time, I think it's probably tough when it's going really well to manage that expectation. But I feel like I'm not too bad at that, and I don't do that. But I do. My thing is, when we win, I celebrate. My celebrations are probably a little bit more. There's a bigger release for me when it gets to that 90 minutes and that relief, of winning a game of football. But to refer back to that in terms of the performance, I think it's incredibly big for me, and I have a really good relationship with my staff. And one thing I think we've really done since Christmas is they've really embraced what I want. I've made it really much better for them to understand what it is that I want. So now there can be more of a consistent message. And I've met with my players over the last couple of days to talk about the season that's just passed. And that's the big thing that I'm saying to them is that I know since Christmas I've given you a chance. Because before that it was so juggled and uncertain that now you must have a bit more of a clearer picture of what it is I'm asking. So now I can analyse that performance and say, well, this is what we did wrong and why we lost, or this is what we did really well and why we won. Yeah. And then of course there comes them moments in the game where balls are flying in the box and you're under pressure and you've got to get over the line and you need to find that way to win and defend and do all the English football type things to help you win a football match. That's when the winning, becoming the be all and end all falls into play, doesn't it?
Yeah. And Ibrahim Sadat's put, what was your biggest challenge when you took over? I suppose it depends on which time you took over.
Yeah, which one? I think to look at it practically, when I say took over, I as much as I've had 3 interim periods, I would say that I've taken over twice. One, I've taken over from Steve. It was only 3 times. I took over from Steve. That was a very short period. We knew a new manager was coming in. But when I took over from Justin, the biggest challenge was to try to find normal for the players every day to come in and for them to know that for that hour and a half they're going to be in, or the 3 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours that they're in at the training ground, it's a normal environment for them to come into. And it was all right to cry. It was all right to laugh. Yeah. Because they're 2 emotions that people were uncertain about at that time. And then I think the big thing for me, like we just touched on there, was finding what was going to be me and us and Leyton Orient after Christmas to allow me to be successful in the job for a long term and to make us a team that are going to win football matches.
Yeah. And we've had anonymous, I presume this is a Leyton Orient fan, because they've put, how's the pipeline from the youth setup? Any ready to break through to keep an eye on?
We've had a couple of debuts this year, which I'm really excited about. And we've had a couple of young boys who haven't had the opportunity to get in the team, who probably would have played some minutes between now and the end of the season had we finished the 10 games. Hector Kiprianou is someone that won't be a household name to anyone, but he's played for Cyprus under 19s. He made 5 league appearances this year. He's someone that I'm incredibly excited about. We've got a couple of other lads, Ruel Sotiriou, hopefully we get his contract now down. He's another one. Hasn't played a huge amount of games, but got 3 or 4 goals before the end of the season and has given himself an opportunity to kick on. Academy was in a dark place because we was in the National League and no one knew if we were going to have one not so long ago. So it took a bit of an impact and we lost a number of players to the bigger clubs, which is, I think, reality for where we're at now. But I feel we've got some good players coming through that hopefully can take the next step and get in the team.
Is that hard for you to not do you get involved in that, or are you purposely not getting involved because obviously the focus has got to be on the first team squad, but given your history, it's hard not to.
I'll tell you what I've found hard is that finding time to be accessible for people like that. And because I was the one that everyone come to at the training ground and the academy came into me, I was involved in a lot of the meetings. I did a lot of the development coaching previously. I've probably still been seen as the person to go to. And now all of a sudden I'm the manager. I sort of have to find my way of saying no to certain things. But I admire any manager that has that real open-minded and support for the academy. So the academy manager, I sit down with him most days. I watch the training. I have the boys over. The minute there's a player that comes out of training, first thing we do is get a young boy over. I go to training in the evenings. I've been to a lot of games on a Sunday morning to watch the kids play. Probably haven't been able to watch the youth team as much because they've been away when we've been at home and vice versa. So that's been quite tough from their perspective. But I get to watch their clips. The world's an easier thing to follow now, isn't it, from a football perspective. But especially now, I've been involved in the Zoom calls with the new under-8s, welcoming them, which is a big part for me because that was my first job, welcoming the new under-8s. So to be able to do that and show people what the club means to people. And hopefully it has an impact on the fact that, I'm not a household name and my name don't particularly blow people away, but the fact that I've got a love and an interest for what's coming through the academy hopefully sends a message to us, maybe getting that one or two over the line and into our academy than going somewhere else.
Yeah, I'm sure it does. It's actually that last question was from Stuart Isted Puffin. Puffin is the head of the Leyton Orient Supporters Club in Dubai. That's maybe why he needed to remain anonymous.
My cousin lives in Dubai, so you might want to sit with him and watch a couple of games when the season comes.
I'll let him know. I think they go to McGettigans, but I'm not sure. But I was going to ask you, I know I've kept you here, mate. We're at 9:20, right. But is he sure you're right? Yeah,
you're good, mate. You're good.
All right, brilliant. Thank you. I was going to ask, in terms of like mentors in a game. So obviously you're still a young manager. What, you're 39, 38, 39?
38, yeah, 39 this year.
Yeah. So who do you speak to? You mentioned earlier this morning, Dean Smith at Villa. Who do you go? Who your go to? And have you found people like accessible on that, or made themselves accessible, or have you tried to get to them?
Dean Smith, I don't have to, because I grew up coaching his boy. I grew up with him here as a player. I was in the youth role when he was assistant manager to Martin at Leyton Orient. So Dean's always great with me. I tend to just text him and say, "You got 5 minutes," and he normally calls me when he's in the car on the way home. So that's really good. He's always been like that for me, even before I was involved in a first team environment. So I've got a really good relationship with Dean, and we probably don't talk hugely about football. We talk more about about coaching. He was a coach and made his way from being youth team manager at Walsall into the first team, and he obviously had a playing career, so different to me, but similar sort of pathway as you ended up in it, and certainly at the same club. So I think that's really important to understand that sort of transition a little bit, and the fact that he's managing, amongst the best players in the country and the world is fantastic to hear and know how your opinions don't differ too much, in terms of what you're aspiring. And that's the thing I always try to say to our players and our staff is still want to aspire to be Man City and Barcelona, and not necessarily the way that you play, but to aspire to be like that. Otherwise, you're never going to achieve it if you don't set out to. So Dean's great for me. I think it's probably something I've got to do better at in terms of a network, I suppose, because I never played. I haven't got that group of people that I played with that are now in management or played against that are now, amongst my circle of friends. So I don't think that I've really got many around. I speak to Alex Inglethorpe, who's at Liverpool. It shouldn't be sold short that Martin Ling's absolutely brilliant for me in terms of my director of football. So I have that manager every day. Yeah. Again, we don't talk about 4-4-2 or 4-5-1. We talk about man management how to approach certain elements and certain things. So I think it's saying that I've got to build more. The LMA of
Going to ask the LMA, yeah, is that
brilliant, absolutely brilliant union, but they offered me some support with certain mentors, and I think if you've got a mentor or people that support you, I think you've got to have something in common with them,
right.
and real understanding. They've got to have a real understanding of you. Jeff Pike has come out of the FA, and he spent some time with me at the back end of this season. Has been brilliant for me in terms of just reviewing my coaching and how I look at the
So Jeff's coming out for a course. He was supposed to come out in April to deliver our international license, but he's obviously got postponed. So
he's been great for me, Jeff, because he come in and he was an outsider in terms of didn't know what I wanted, didn't know how I wanted to do it, didn't know me, watched my sessions, came to a few games, and really had like simple questions to ask me, but gives me things to think about as a coach, which no one else really does. But I think it's something I've got to get better at in terms of networking with other managers and that sort of thing. But like I say, I suppose I've got to build that as I go patiently, really.
Yeah, great. And that self-development for you, have you done your pro license?
No, I haven't.
Something that you want to do, or is that how
yeah, I think so. In time, I think what would be foolish of me. I looked at the LMA do like a manager's course as well, which is like a diploma. But I think what would be foolish of me to do is start saying I want to upskill myself in this and this when I haven't really got to grips with the job. Do you know what I mean? I needed that first before I started thinking about going and doing another course, because I've got to be honest, this year, my day off, I was just dropping the kids to school and then just laying flat out on the sofa trying to ignore the phone ringing because I had so much going on in my head. So the great thing has been this lockdown in terms of being able to listen to certain people. I've done a webinar with Brendan Rodgers a couple of weeks ago, and brilliant. He talked about that transition to management and how it's all right to say no, and how it's all right to not do certain things. So if you turn up to work and you've got 20 things to do on your list, it's all right to only do 4 of them. Okay. Things like that, and being able to say no, to be able to sort of turn people down and prioritise. That's been a big part of it for me. And the biggest thing from how it affects what we do when we go back is being able to watch football. Yeah. You know, I've watched Leicester, Leeds, Man City, Sheffield United, loads since I've been off. I don't get to do that. I ain't even got Sky anymore because I come home, I ain't going to watch a game of football like that because I'm tired or don't get home till late. You try telling the missus to turn EastEnders off and put the football on after coming home late. But I think if I'm going to put a game of football on, I put Macclesfield against Mansfield on to try and work out what's going to happen at the weekend. So it's been brilliant to have a look and think, right, Leicester play this shape. This is what I really like about what Vardy does, or how Maddison fits into that, how they get the best out of Chilwell, those sorts of things. And like I said earlier, try and match up what my players do to try and compare them to the very best, because I don't get the opportunity to do it enough. So I think that they're the really upskilling things in the immediate and focusing on what being a manager looks like. I said there, like about the emotional side of it and that sort of thing, that things that are going to help me be better. Yeah, excellent. Well, Puffin's actually put Scott comes along. Good. Yeah. So I socialise with you more than me then. Well, listen, mate, I'll let you go now because that's an hour and a half, which basically bang on, and I really, really appreciate your time. It's been great to listen. You've got, I think it's such a fantastic kind of journey that you've gone on, and I'm really, really excited for you to see how you go, and I wish you all the very best. No, and I think from my perspective, Chris, I don't know however many people are on here, but it's been great what you've done. I know there's a lot of people started out trying to do it and then never saw it through and haven't maintained it. But the fact that you've done, I think you said I was guest number 16, and you've kept it going, and the level of guests that you've had, mate, it's brilliant. So keep it up. I appreciate that, mate. Thank you very much. Thank you. And I will when football is back on and when I'm back in England, I'll be coming to an Orient game. Can't wait. Yeah, can't wait. Man.
All right. Kenny Brown's just put great listening. I want to wish Ross all the very best for next season.
Top man. Thank you very much, mate.
Right, mate. Well, I will speak to you soon. Give my love to your family. And
Mate.
top man. Take care.
Take care, everyone.